Well, joining me now to discuss all this is my panel, Jonathan Conricus, the former Lieutenant Colonel and spokesman for the IDF, Iranian-Canadian commentator Goldie Gamari, Jack Posobiec, senior editor of Human Events, and Wajahat Ali, the host of Democracy-ish. Welcome to all of you. Wajahat, let me start with you. If you look at the deal, I want to play a clip. This is Barack Obama's response to the news of this deal.
It is doubtful that any agreement that arises is going to be significantly different or a significant improvement from the deal that we had in the first place and had worked for a long stretch of time before the United States pulled out of it. So I'm hopeful that bombing stops.
This debate took a dramatic turn when a simple question was asked. After all the promises, all the rhetoric, and all the political risk, what exactly did Donald Trump gain from this conflict with Iran? What follows is a heated exchange featuring Piers Morgan's panel as they clash over whether Trump's strategy was a success, a failure, or something in between. Some argue the administration achieved important military objectives, while others say the end result looks strikingly similar to the very agreement Trump spent years criticizing. The discussion quickly escalates into a broader debate about Iran, Israel, regime change, and America's role in the region. If you're enjoying this type of political commentary, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As you'll see, the conversation raises some uncomfortable questions about what was promised, what actually happened, and why even some of Trump's supporters appear divided on the outcome. Watch this, and I'll give you my thoughts afterwards.
I mean, that's what many people think is the reality with Jahat, which is that the Obama deal with Iran was ridiculed and mocked by Trump as a terrible deal. He ripped it up in 2018. But many people looking at what's unfolding here believe that actually this deal is no better and perhaps may even end up being slightly worse than the deal that Trump so mercilessly mocked and has done ever since.
Actually, I disagree with President Obama. It is far, far worse. It is a massive loss for President Trump, the United States, and Benjamin Netanyahu. I want to remind everyone that about 3.5 months ago, Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu decided to launch this illegal, unconstitutional war with Iran. They have since done what? They've done a regime change. So what have they done, Piers? They replaced the older, dying Khamenei with a younger, more militant Khamenei. The Strait of Hormuz, which was open, is now closed. Iran, especially with this young guard coming up, is flexing its power. Iran has actually emerged in a way much stronger. Our allies are abandoning us because they see us as weak. The United States of America couldn't use its military might to force Iran to open up the Strait of Hormuz. Instead, many of our allies are going to what? China to look for a stable partner. Thousands of people have died, 4,000 Iranians, 4,000 Lebanese people. Israel is occupying Lebanon right now, has ethnically cleansed about 1 million Lebanese people. And with this deal, what's going to happen? Obama gave $3 billion. Now, according to the terms, we haven't seen it, but what we've seen from both sides so far is that Donald Trump will give about $300 billion, right, to Iran to rebuild. He's going to release the assets that were frozen. Iran says they're going to get sanctions relief. They're going to get an inshallah about, the uranium and the enrichment. And then what he could have done and should have done was simply stay with the JCPOA, not blown it up, which was actually a diplomatic coup. And voila, now we have this massive loss. And furthermore, Piers, something that's remarkable that you and I have not seen in our lifetime, I think you and I had the wisdom to be against the war on terror. We've seen in our lifetime that most Americans, whenever the United States bombs Muslim majority countries, they're with them. The majority of Americans are not with Donald Trump on this. In fact, every single month that this war has gone on, a majority of Americans, including his base, including young Republicans, say, why are we in this war and why are we giving this money to Israel? So what's going to happen now, and I think what President Trump should do, is we know what Israel's going to do. I don't know if you just saw earlier today, Israel's defense minister said, we don't care, and you just heard what Naftali Bennett said, we don't care what the United States does. We're going to continue occupying Gaza, we're going to continue occupying Syria, we're going to continue occupying Lebanon, we're going to do what we're going to have to do. If Trump was smart, what he'd say is the following: Israel, you do what you want. We don't have your back, we're not going to defend you, we're not going to use our munitions, you take on Iran by itself, and I guarantee you, if Donald Trump finally cuts off Netanyahu, Israel will back away. It'll probably take 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, but it will. And that's in the best interest of the United States and Trump, who's negative double digits on this issue.
All right, Jack Posobiec, it's very hard to see how this is a win, isn't it, for Donald Trump? However this plays out. I mean, all the objectives from the start. I mean, you know, he posted, as I said earlier, there'll be no deal except unconditional surrender. Well, we couldn't be further away from that. If at the end of all this, there's a situation very similar to the situation that Obama found himself in when he did his deal with the Iranians, where's the win? Why would that not be also just as mockable as Donald Trump mocked it at the time?
Well, yeah, Piers. I mean, as you say, we're not entirely sure what the final details of the bill will be or the deal will be because it's not completely sussed out. It also hasn't been completely publicized. In fact, just prior to going on here, I reached out to the White House saying, can we get a readout? Can we get some specific details? Haven't received that yet, but I'm sure they're going to be putting more out as we can. One of the things, though, that I would push back on is the idea that it's the same as the Obama deal. In fact, there's other pieces to this that are totally separate from the Obama deal. For example, there's no phased, return to enrichment, return to a nuclear weapon. They're talking about completely ending it, so no backdoor deal where they would be able to get it.
But the wording of that,
end.
though, Jack, just to jump in on that, Jack, the wording of that is literally almost identical as the wording in the Obama deal, which is that Iran undertakes never to pursue a nuclear weapon and so on. It's literally almost word for word, right? So
I believe that
in terms of
the part
a guarantee from the Iranians,
specifically, not just the weapon, but the enrichment, not just the weapon, but the enrichment. I believe
so
that part.
So do you accept then,
different.
Jack, do you accept that if the enriched uranium remains in Iranian hands at the end of all this, that is a failure?
Well, I think that's one of the pieces that they want to get in this next 60-day extension, that they want to go into what exactly will happen to not just the enriched, but the highly enriched, right? The part that's very close to becoming weaponized uranium. And will that be down blended to lower enriched? Will that be physically removed? Will the U.S. be involved? President Trump actually had that tweet out right after he came out from China saying that perhaps China would be involved. So I sort of read through the tea leaves on that and said maybe he's reached out to China to see when he was there to see if he wants to get the Chinese involved. I do agree that something needs to be done with that highly enriched uranium. And the president has said that consistently. If that is done, we will see a big difference between the Obama deal. But also in general, the two pieces I want to point out where it's different is that he didn't just use diplomacy here, right? He used weapons of warfare. He's able to go back to that at any point if he wants to. And yes, the polling is what it is. There's no question. But he still has shown that he's willing to do that if there is no compliance. That's totally different from what Obama did. Just the context of this is completely different. And finally, I think it's a win for the president because he didn't go the full neocon route of boots on the ground, invading Karg Island, trying to go full Iraq-Afghanistan style regime change with this.
But I think that's the problem, Jack, is that he's with this deal. You can already feel the mood music is that all those neocons who've been full square behind Trump over this, they're now beginning to turn on him. They're asking far more difficult questions. They're all clearly whipping themselves up into a frenzy of anger about this, as are the Israelis. So, Trump could end up in a situation where almost everyone's pissed off. And again, I just ask, where's the win
what
here?
A bunch of ingrates.
I mean, I can't help thinking. I can't help of ingrates.
Absolutely ingrates, because they were the ones who said, hey, let's give this a shot. Let's see if we can knock off the regime. We'll take out the Ayatollah. We'll take out the higher levels, the first layer, the second layer, which was done. And then it would be some massive win where the regime would collapse, the people would rise up. And Piers, as you yourself said, that just hasn't occurred. That was a bill of goods that was always not in the cards. That was always not something that they had. And President Trump has said, you know what? We got what we got. We're not going any further. And if you guys don't like it, you can pound sand.
Okay, Jonathan Conricus, welcome back to Uncensored. Look, it just seems to me, Jonathan, and I've been saying this is highly likely to be how this all played out for quite a while. There are two competing agendas here, and I think we're now seeing all this come to a head, where Donald Trump has a political and economic imperative to stop this war. He just knows it's getting more and more damaging to him politically, and to the Republicans with the midterms coming, and economically, it just isn't sustainable to keep doing this. But the Israelis, clearly, from the rhetoric we're already seeing from senior members of the Israeli government and from others, as widespread view in Israel, that this is a different thing for them. That Israel wants to have the right to continue doing it, and that I suspect from the way they're talking, that's exactly what they will do. So, is that your reading of this?
Yeah, thanks for having me back on. Naftali Bennett, he was, I think, very, very measured in his comments. And I think I can, maybe he's careful because he wants to be able to communicate well with Trump if Naftali Bennett is elected. And then he needs to have a good working relationship. So he's careful with, respecting the president. I can perhaps speak a little bit more freely and reflect public sentiment and general sentiment. And you quoted two right-wing, pretty extreme ministers, but I can tell you that there's, on the other side of the aisle in Israel, from the opposition, saying equal things about how horrible this apparent deal is. And of course, we have to understand that we're in an information deficit. The Iranians are pumping out much more information than the US is, and there's unclarity. We have dishonest negotiators here, Pakistan and Qataris, and of course, they have an inherent interest in promoting the Islamic Republic. And the US hasn't yet already said what the deal actually entails. And the most important topics, what are the details regarding their nuclear weapons, regarding their proxies in the region. But the Israeli perspective is different because we, like most other people here, have skin in the game. We have been at the receiving end of Iranian aggression for the last 35 years. Israelis have been killed and abducted and burned and murdered by Iranian proxies. Israelis have been forced to run for shelter for so many years by rockets that were either made in Iran or paid for by Iran. And Iran has waged indirect warfare using Arabs as their cannon fodder against Israel for a very long time. So that is the main reason why the Israeli perspective is wholly different. This isn't about what America wants from an Israeli perspective. This is about the very basic necessity of the Israeli state to defend itself against Iranian aggression. And just to put things into context here, Israel, up until now, never even spoke about, bringing down the Iranian regime. But the Iranian regime has had an official goal to annihilate what they call the Zionist entity, which is the state of Israel. And they've been trying to achieve that by all the means that they have. So one positive thing that we can speak about is the damage that has been inflicted on the Iranian regime's ability to produce weapons of mass destruction. I think thanks to military action by the US and Israel, there's a significant downgrading in that capacity. The Iranian regime is still exposed. Iranian skies are still open to Israeli and, if they decide to do so, American planes. And there are many things that have changed. Yes, I agree with you, and with this I'll conclude. If this deal follows through as it is communicated by the Iranians mostly, it seems to be a very, very bad deal, bad for the Iranian people, bad for the Lebanese people who will continue to be held hostage by Hezbollah, Iran's proxy in Lebanon. It'll be bad for Gulf countries, and I don't think it will do a lot of good to the US because in terms of global superpower and a country that wants to have alliances and allies around the world, not a good look. But again, I'm cautious here because we don't yet have the details, and I hope to be wrong on all the pessimistic things that I've said.
Goldie Gamari, you posted in response to the announcement the deal was done, Contract Law 101, both parties must sign a deal. If anyone thinks the terrorist Islamic regime will sign and honor a deal made with the great Satan, while their beloved supreme dictator remains unburied and rotting in a fridge, I have a bridge to set you. You added, President Trump has created the conditions to exterminate the terrorist Islamic regime occupying Iran. If it doesn't agree to sign and abide by the unconditional surrender deal Trump wants, bookmark this post. So strong words there, but again, there is a reality check, is there not? That it's clear to me that Donald Trump wants out of this war. It's equally clear to me that Israel does not. And these competing positions are now hurtling to a point where something has to give.
Well, I'm not quite sure what makes you say that. That's not what I've seen from President Trump. President Trump has said that he has all the time in the world. It's not just the military aspect here. There's also the economic aspect. No one really speaks about Project Economic Fury. Now, here's the thing. The Islamic regime is slowly collapsing internally. I hear some people talking about how there's like this new, stronger, more, hardliner Ayatollah. Where is he? Why haven't we seen him? Why hasn't he put out a video or a voice message or anything like that? The reality is the Islamic regime is scared. They're scrambling. And right now, President Trump is really putting their feet to the fire because I have seen and shared footage from inside of Occupied Iran.
Really?
Yeah,
Goldie?
absolutely. Well,
Really?
Here's, did you know that the supporters of the Islamic
Where is the
regime-
evidence? Where is the evidence this regime does not maintain a completely tight grip over the country and the people? There hasn't been any uprising of any kind by the Iranian people since the start of this war. That does not suggest to me a regime that is collapsing from within. That was the promise that Netanyahu and the head of Mossad made. Well, hang on. Let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish. That was the promise made in the White House Situation Room by Benjamin Netanyahu and the head of Mossad, was that there would be a dismantling of the leadership, the IRGC would collapse from within, the people would rise up, and that would be how this played out. None of that's happened. That's what I mean by a reality check. And far from unconditional surrender of the kind Donald Trump wanted, we're way away from unconditional surrender.
Piers, you have to let me respond. So first of all, there's footage coming out from inside of occupied Iran where supporters of the Islamic regime are actually chanting death to Arakchi and death to Ghalibaf because they are angry at the possibility of the Islamic regime signing a peace deal with the great Satan. So that's number one. Number two, when it comes to this, the Iranian people rising up, Iranians have made it very clear. Our leader is His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi. Reza Pahlavi has said very clearly that when the conditions are right, he will make the call, he will issue the call, and the Iranian people at that point will rise up. He has not issued that call yet. And so anyone who's out there saying, oh, the war has failed because the Iranian people haven't risen up, they don't know what they're talking about, because you have to look at the Iranian angle here. The Iranian people listened to His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi. We already know that on January 8 and 9, when they went out, they were massacred. Over 40,000 innocent, unarmed Iranians were slaughtered. Anyone who thinks that Iranians will once again go out while they are unarmed, while the Islamic regime is still a little bit in control and still has the weapons and still brings in their proxy terrorist groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and others, Hashd al-Shabi, to murder Iranians. If you think Iranians are going to rise up right now when the conditions aren't right, you know nothing about Iran. So that's why Iranians haven't risen up, because His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi has not issued the call yet. It has nothing to do with Israel, nothing to do with America. Ultimately, Iranians have been fighting for freedom for 47 years. We will overthrow the Islamic regime with or without international help. That's all there is to it.
Okay, Wajahat, that's all there is to it, apparently.
When it comes to why the Iranian people haven't up yet, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're waiting for the call of His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi. That's what he said. He's the leader of the Iranian Revolution.
Back in reality, if Reza Pahlavi actually goes to Iran right now, most likely he would be assassinated and he would not be greeted with the majority of people because he's seen as an agent and tool of the United States of America. But let's go back to reality. Donald Trump's biggest mistake. His biggest mistake was being dog-walked by Benjamin Netanyahu.
I would suggest you don't speak about the Iranian people and how they view His Royal Highness. You're not Iranian. You have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea what people in Iran think or say.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. I appreciate your alternative take on history. Let me just respond. Back in reality, Donald Trump's biggest mistake was he allowed himself to be dog-walked by Benjamin Netanyahu. He pulled out of the JCPOA. If he had just stuck with it, Piers, if he had just stuck with it, Iran would be weaker right now. The regime would actually be much more compliant. There would be much more transparency. It'd be less dangerous. He blew it up. Why? Because Netanyahu said, blow it up. So he did. Then he made the mistake last year of joining Israel in its 12-day war. And Donald Trump then bragged bragged about destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities. He degraded it, didn't destroy it. The biggest mistake was that Donald Trump did something that no president has done in 47 years. He actually followed Netanyahu and Israel into this regime change, this illegal, unconstitutional war. Now, what happened? And you've mentioned the facts. He promised regime change. There isn't a regime change. Sadly, there isn't. This is a totalitarian regime. It's gotten younger. The same players have just been, if you will, upgraded because they're younger, a bit more militant. Iran is flexing its muscles. Iran wargamed this. The Strait of Hormuz was open. Now it's closed. Who controls the Strait of Hormuz? Iran. What's happened to the global economy? You've seen Asia Pacific just get riled. You've seen gas prices go up to $4.50 to $5. Donald Trump, the Trump administration, has openly said that as a result of this, even if the strait opens, we're going to see high gas prices until 2027. Energy shortage, fuel shortage, food shortage. It's rocked Asia Pacific. Like I said before, our allies, our Gulf allies said, hey, man, we have bases here. We have U.S. companies here. We're getting targeted by Iran. They're looking to China for a new partnership. So what did Donald Trump gain by being dog-walked by Netanyahu? His poll numbers are rock bottom. A majority of Americans are against this war. Gas prices are up, food shortages, energy shortages, helium shortage. Furthermore, the Strait of Hormuz, again, is closed. It used to be open, folks. So Iran, yes, it has suffered many losses. We should not forget about the fact that Israel has killed so many people. Israel still occupies Lebanon. Israel still occupies Gaza. Israel still occupies Syria. And it's so interesting that Naftali Bennett comes on here and says, well, Israel has a right to defend itself. What about Palestinians? What about the Lebanese? What about the Syrians? What about Iranians? Because last time I checked, the United States and Israel were the ones who unilaterally started this war, assassinated Khamenei. And furthermore, 4,000,
the IRGC. You don't speak for us, Iranians.
Wonderful. Listen, let me just finish.
We're so grateful
I know. Yes,
regime is being attacked.
Sure. I'm sure you are grateful.
Do not conflate.
I'm sure you are grateful.
We are not one and the same. Do not conflate Iran.
4,000 Iranians have been killed, and 1 million Lebanese people have been displaced.
Over 40,000 have been killed by the Islamic regime in January. Where were you then? Where were you then? Like,
I was against the regime. I was against
it. And the regime. It's like everything is blame Israel.
He didn't get the talking points from Arakchi. Arakchi didn't send him the talking points, which he so effectively has been riling off now. I mean, basically, Arakchi or IRGC spokesperson could have said everything word by word that you just said. You're just reading off Iranian propaganda talking points. I don't know. You call yourself American. You call yourself something in favor of the U.S.
Listen. The game has changed. The game has changed.
After the other.
No one believes. No one believes Israel.
Not accurate. Many of them not accurate. I don't think a lot of people believe you either.
Jonathan.
Many of them weren't accurate.
The problem, Jonathan. The problem is a lot of the Iranian talking points, as you put it, are demonstrably true, in the sense that they do control the Strait of Hormuz. The regime is still intact. The Ayatollah's dead, but his son has replaced him. And although we haven't seen him, we've had statements come from him, and he is believed to still be alive, albeit wounded. We'll see. I mean, time will tell. But we've also seen Iran attack its neighbors in the Gulf with impunity, which has caused enormous damage there. So this idea, and, I totally agree with Wajahat, there's been a lot of damage militarily to Iran's Navy and Air Force and so on. That's indisputable. But what's also indisputable, Jonathan, is that there's been an asymmetric war battled through the Strait of Hormuz and the control of global energy and all the economic damage that causes. And it's been very effective. And the Iranians know that. So, my concern about this is not a defensive Iran. I think the Iranian regime is despicable and has oppressed its people for nearly 50 years now. And it's appalling. But, there are lots of despicable regimes around the world, and the Americans don't attack them. I think the Americans attacked Iran when they did because Benjamin Netanyahu persuaded Donald Trump this was the moment
really,
to
you
do
believe
it.
That as well? Really?
I'm sorry, I do.
Really?
I think he persuaded him. Yeah, I really do.
Piers,
I really believe.
I honestly expect you, Piers.
Let me finish my point. I believe, as we read in the New York Times 2 months ago, in a very detailed analysis of what happened, that Netanyahu and the head of Mossad laid out a chain of events which they believed was perfectly achievable, and Donald Trump signed up to it. I'm not saying he didn't in the end make his own decision for the United States. I'm just saying He believed Benjamin Netanyahu when he said, if you do this, then all this will follow. And it hasn't turned out that way. And that's why Trump wants out. But Benjamin Netanyahu wants to finish the job. And that is where we now are, I believe. Now, there will be people who, even as I say that, Jonathan, will be screaming, well, yes, because you're anti-Semitic. No, I'm not.
No,
I'm really
not. I'm not going to say that.
I just know what I see with my own eyes.
I wish, as an Israeli citizen, not, speaking about whether I support this prime minister or not, doesn't matter. He's my prime minister. I just wish that Israel was had the 10th of the power and influence over global events that we are accredited to in international media, especially the New York Times. And I wish that we had that influence over decision making in the world. Sadly, that isn't the case. And I think it's been proven and demonstrated time and time again by decisions made by this American president, who undoubtedly is a great friend of Israel, but he's made lots of decisions that don't go well with Israel. The situation in Gaza isn't good for Israel. The situation in Lebanon, as it is now, where the Iranian regime allegedly is allowed to link between the two countries, Hezbollah, their protege, and the situation in Iran, that's not a good situation for Israel. Trump's deal with the Houthis a year and a half ago, where he directly bypassed Israel and made a deal with the Houthis to claim that Israel has some kind of magic influence. It's a very, very tired kind of dog whistle kind of a thing to be saying, and it's just so untrue. The US, I believe, did this because it serves American purposes of being the strongest country in the world, power competition with China, of having a stronger influence in the Middle East, and for the president to show capacity to take on enemies and adversaries and do it well. Granted, the situation on the ground isn't positive in that sense, and there's definitely the results are less positive than what we would have wanted. Final word, I'll say this. You before you claimed things about Israel, on October 7, there were no Israeli troops in any of the places that you just said. Why are there Israeli troops in Gaza? Because Hamas, an Iranian proxy, invaded us on October 7. Why are there Israeli troops in Lebanon? Because Hezbollah, another Iranian proxy, attacked Israel and has been attacking Israel relentlessly since October 8, and they haven't stopped for a single day. Why are there Israeli troops in Syria? Because jihadists on the other side are saying we want to invade Israel and do what Hamas did on October 7. So there's very good, down-to-earth, logical reasons for Israel to need to defend ourselves. And I assure you, we don't want to send our troops to faraway borders. I have kids in the military as well, and it's very personal and real world for us here in Israel. But the bottom line is, war in the Middle East will end once our enemies understand that they cannot defeat us and they should stop trying. Until then, we will continue to defend ourselves, and it'll take as long as it takes, and a lot of people may dislike it. But just like we said about the Iranian people, eventually the Iranian people will be free from this Islamist oppression, and eventually, hopefully, inshallah, God willing, one day there will also be peace between Israel and our neighbors.
Well, that would be great if there was peace. The problem with starting wars is if you don't win them, then it gets arguably more problematic than it was to start with. Let me just, before we finish, I want to ask Jack Posobiec just quickly about the UFC bill over at the White House at the weekend. I've got to say, I've seen all the whining and the moaning and it's demeaning and it's cheap and it's tacky and all this crap, frankly. I watched it for a bit. I thought it was great. I thought it was a spectacle to celebrate the 250th anniversary of a day that I know you guys love, but we Brits aren't quite so fond of. That actually is a celebration of Americana. UFC is one of the biggest sports in America. A lot of working class people love UFC. And to have the White House putting on this event outside was cool. I've seen rock concerts at Buckingham Palace with Brian May from Queen on the roof. Loved it. And I loved it last night. I don't understand all the whining. Do you?
Well, Piers, I can understand. I can understand it because it was a massive win for Donald Trump. And a lot of people have FOMO, but I do not, because I was there last night and I had a phenomenal time. That was not only one of the best cards I've ever seen, that was one of the best just fights I've ever seen. And to see it at the White House, to see it there celebrating America's 250th birthday, it was also the president's birthday, it was the Army's birthday, an incredible display of exactly what the MAGA movement is all about. And the way I would try to explain this to folks that aren't part of the MAGA movement or don't quite get it or never understood Trump's appeal is that it's not about you. It's about his connection to the working class voter, his connection to the average American, his connection. It's very masculine. It's very much about the muscular class. It's very much about those guys who take a shower before they go to work and come home after they come home from work. And it's about that authenticity that he has, where you can see he's actually getting into it. He knows the fighters. He's met many of the fighters. And one just thing that was cool to see as a fight fan myself. This was the first UFC event in history where every single bout was decided by knockout. It's never happened before.
Yeah, it was a great bout. And Wajahat, I know you're enraged about it, obviously. Dumbass Trump fans are applauding a bunch of grifters making millions of this deranged spectacle tonight while they pay for groceries and gas and lose healthcare. God, you're all such cucks, total gimps. And I was like, come on, with
free tickets, by the way.
It's just a UFC. It's just a UFC event outside the White House. It looked great. They avoided the bad weather, thankfully. The actual competing was brilliant, as Jack said. Almost unprecedented, actually, that they all ended that way. Why whine about that? There are so many hills that the left can die on going after Trump. There are so many things that, even I would agree with you about a lot of it, right? But Iran being one of them. But the UFC bout at the White House, why all the whining? It's just a bit pathetic.
I'm glad Jack said that's what MAGA's all about, because only 16% of Americans actually approved of that. A majority of Americans, including Republicans, were actually, even UFC fans and even Trump fans, were actually disgusted that the White House and our soldiers were used as props for essentially what is a big grift for Donald Trump and his billionaire friends. I want to remind everyone that it cost about $60 million. Donald Trump says, hey, inshallah, UFC will pay for it. But that's what he said about the ballroom. Oh, the ballroom that he destroyed, and now he's claiming he wants $1 billion, also cost about $12 million for security. Also, we had the honor guard being used as props, and they had to salute the fighters who came out of the Oval Office. And now the only thing that people are talking about is one of the fighters, who, by the way, vomited on himself 2 days ago, said that Michelle Obama is a man, and everyone lauged. So, yeah, if you want to celebrate grifters, if you want to celebrate crypto, go ahead.
The only bit
it's
of
only
that,
16% of Americans.
The only bit of that I agree with was the disgusting comment about Michelle Obama, and I thought that was incredibly offensive and shouldn't have happened. But the rest of it, including the ballroom, by the way, if he wants to upgrade the ballroom, so what? If there's a bigger ballroom that is safer and better protected than we saw, for example, at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, then good. Why get so het up about something so insignificant in the general scheme of things? Anyway, I won't ask you.
Tell the majority of Americans, Piers. Tell the majority.
You'll sound very het up.
No, tell the majority of Americans, because Donald Trump promised the people, his own base, it won't cost you a dime. It'll cost $100 million. Then it became $200 million. Then it became $300 million.
Okay.
Then it became $400 million. And now it's $1 billion in taxes. And if I may say this, he wasted $14 million in the reflecting pool. Have you seen the reflecting pool? Now algae is growing in it, a beautiful microcosm of Trump. Final thing I'll say is, for people who really, really seem to hate gay folks, what I saw yesterday, I saw part of it, that to me looked like the MAGA Pride Parade. Very gay.
All right, that was funny. All right, guys, thank you all very much indeed. I appreciate the debate.
So, after watching that exchange, the biggest takeaway for me is this. The debate isn't really about whether pressure was applied to Iran. It's about whether the outcome matched the promises that were made at the beginning. Throughout this discussion, both sides offered very different interpretations of what happened. Some argued that important military objectives were achieved and that Iran's capabilities were weakened. Others questioned whether the final result looked significantly different from arrangements that had previously been criticized. That's where the political challenge comes in. When leaders set very ambitious goals, people naturally expect equally ambitious results. If the outcome appears less clear-cut, voters are going to ask tough questions about whether the strategy ultimately delivered what was promised. What also stood out was how divided opinions remain. Even among people who broadly support the same side. That alone shows this debate is far from settled and will likely continue well beyond this particular agreement. At the end of the day, the key question is simple. Did the final result justify the cost, the risk, and the expectations that were created? That's what people will continue debating in the weeks and months ahead. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more political commentary and analysis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.